Those components that's in Drupal that basically allows you to take any record in the system and be able to create a report off of it, looking at different fields, looking at different different types of content. Whatever you've got out there in the Drupal system, you can pretty much get at through views, or through views and along with some of these contributed modules that work with views. It's the #1 module out there in the contributed world in Drupal. There are more things built in views more sites using views than any other module out there right now. But in the structure menu, views is located there, and if you go to views, you get a listing of all the views that are on a site. You also have a link to be able to add a new view, or add a view from a template on a view, or do an import of a view. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we're going to just right now go into add a view, and we're going to just call this team page. We're going to just call it that, and we're going to make it content. We're going to say that it's content of a team, and we'll just keep the default sort. This is kind of a little wizard that starts us out in building this thing. We are going to create a page. We're going to just accept the path for right now. It'll set that up for us. And we're going to determine what display format this is going to be. For right now, I'm going to just make it an unformatted list, just accept the defaults that are there. Usually when I'm building views, unless I know specifically what I'm going to be building and know all the moves that I'm going to build into a view when I first get started, I just accept all the defaults, because I want to make sure the view is pulling the right kind of information out of the database first and generally giving me the right stuff. Then I go in and tweak it. And I'm also going to create a block, so we have the ability to create that also, and it sets up a default of just 5 of those items. Here it's going to show 10, use a pager. Here it's showing 5. This is just the defaults that Views gives us. I'll continue and edit, and that takes me now to a display of my Views dashboard. So it tells me what the name of the view is up at the top. It gives me a breadcrumb to get back to the rest of my administration site. It has already saved the view, but it's not really permanent until I hit save, and it's telling us that up at the top. It shows us these displays. So with a view, there's actually a master default set of selections on this view that's hidden from us right now. You can set that up to show. Will? It's configurable. Yes, that's right. Dan, I think you can, let's see, where do you do that at? Settings on views, right? I'm not sure, I forgot. Pardon?
Any breadcrumbs for views?
Yeah.
For the settings.
So if I go to settings on my view, that's where I can set up to have my master displayed. Always to show the master. So we'll save that. We'll go back over to the tab where I've got my view and refresh our page. Now we've got our master up there, our master display showing as well. So if I were to create another display on this view using this add button, then it will use the master as the default settings for that new display. And I can see what's actually in there, and I'm looking at the master details right now. I'm going to go back over to looking at the page details on this one. And I'm going to see that I've got my team page title, which was the default that it gave me. I've got a path setting over here in my page settings. These are kind of grouped so that I've got what my format is of what I'm looking at, whether or not I'm using fields, what fields will be pulled into my report, because this is essentially a report writer, and what my filter criteria is for this. And these all got set up by that initial setting of adding the view. It gave me all those things, and it gave me a default sorted criteria based on the post date. And over here are my page settings. gave me my URL. That was one of those things that I selected when I filled out that little wizard to add the view. And then I've got no menu set right now. I've also got access control on this display where I can set it up to be viewed by a role or a permission, and I can pick what that is. And this is just the default that Views gives me. I've got a place for a header and a place for a footer. Here's that pager thing that we saw in the wizard when I first set it up. And then I've got this advanced setting over here, which gets into some deeper stuff that we'll see some of later on. I have the ability on any of these guys to go in and make a change and modify what these settings are as I go through the process. And I can go and look at on my block page. I can see over here that my block page is showing, and you see how that's italics right there? That tells me that that's using the default display settings that comes from that master view setting, the default master settings. So that's what's actually in my default, in my master. If I go over here, I'm going to see that it's formatted list, the settings, content teaser, etc. One of the things that trips people up the most with views is that if I go into a view like this, I'm using the default settings, and I go in here and I change to something else. I change to content here, for instance, instead of fields. I have this ability to be able to change that for all displays. Well, if I've got 5 other displays that are using the default settings, I am in effect changing that setting for all 5 of them. So if you're ever in making a change on a view, make sure you're doing it in such a way that you're not going to affect other displays, because you're changing on a display by display basis. If you know you want to change it for all displays, you're fine making that change. Otherwise, you should cancel or set it up to just override, to just use it for that one display. That will save you a world of hurt if you remember that one thing as you're building your views. And I have changed that. I'm going to go back to this guy here and apply it to all displays so that I'm back to my setting as it was originally. Oh, wait a minute, I had it on fields. Sorry. So now I'm back to all displays. When I've got fields on, then that gives me the ability to go in and add additional fields onto that display. And I have them set so that I can filter what actually gets displayed in this big long list that's down here. By default it's clicked to all, but if I wanted to just, for instance, see content items, then I just click content, and you'll see that all of these things now say content on them. And it's showing all content on the site, whether or not, or all content that's available on the site from all your different content types, whether or not you've picked a certain one in your filter or not. So I can still go in and show another field in there. So see here, it shows that I can show the content type. Well, that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate if I'm just showing for the team page here, right? So that's kind of a little bit about setting those items up. You can go in and you can make those changes. You can add to your filters. You can click in and change any of your different items just by going in and adding and taking away. So, for instance, here, if I wanted to go in and add content on this is people, and I want to go to my people, and I want to look for the position field, which is on my node type here, and I want to show that as well. I've just picked that position field, which will be shown for just this block because I'm going to make it that way. I'm going to override and make my master, keep my master alone, leave my master alone. I'm not going to create a label for that, and I have the ability to exclude that from the display. Sometimes you want to add a field into your list and just exclude it, not show it, but you want to be able to bring it back with your query because you may want to use it in another way. That's what that's all about. Then you have a formatter, so this will allow you to format it to whatever you're going to use. Usually default's the right one to pick because that's going to use the default formatting for your field that you're adding into the display. You've got some style choices here. You can actually add in customized field wrappers and whatnot. You can add in a no results text if you wanted to. You can actually rewrite that field so that if you wanted to have that, for instance, between your, an H2 tag, for instance, you could put that in there and put your position in an H2. If I could see my keyboard, it'd be better. And that'll rewrite that field into an H2 tag for you right when you're doing this. You've got these other settings down here which can be very handy if you're running into some display problems. And then the more is just allowing you to add in an administrative title in there. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that to this display. So now it's not showing me anything down here right now because I actually don't have any content that is team content. So I'm going to go to another tab that I've got here and go to development, and I'm going to create some team content. We'll create 5 of them. We don't need more than that. That's fine. And we'll create, whoops, got to pick team. And now it's just created 50 nodes because I didn't save that. Okay, well, whatever. I can always go in and take those nodes out again. That's being generated by a module called Devel. It allows you to create content on the fly to be able to test against your different things without having to spend the time to create all that content, just to see if everything's working or not. So now we can come over to our team page here, and we can update our preview, and we'll see all of our people with the position text and whatnot that's in there. So there's our block display. Here's our page display. It's just showing a little snippet of what's in that node that got created there. So that's how you get into working with a view, starting out, creating one just from the fly. You have the option on a view to have a menu entry put in. We'll just put team members here. And we'll put it into our main menu for our page display, and we'll save our view.
Wow.
Yes.
What was that? Did you add the menu again?
Yeah, that's over in your. If I go back to team members here, this is my view that I created right there. And I must have done something wrong with my default settings because now my page is showing my fields instead of my content, which is not my intent, right? So I overwrote that accidentally, like I was telling you guys all not to do. So we'll change that back to content for just this page. And that setting for the menu is in page settings here. So right here on the normal menu setting. There's also a tab menu setting, so like if you wanted to have a main page and then a tab at the top of that view to show another view in that, that's one of those that he'll show. So that's kind of a real rough on views, and it's just a matter of going in and playing around and trying some things out. With views, you don't get a lot of options just with views on things like your format. I think you get, I think you actually get all of these different styles.
Those are all default.
These are all default, right? So I must not have some other modules on right now as far as the contributed modules. But like if I turned on Views Slideshow, I'd have one for that. If I turned on one for another contributed module for exporting data, which you can also pull down, it'll show you a data export piece. Which one?
Show that too.
You'll show that too.
Data export.
Awesome. Good deal. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea on these things. I'm not going to change any of that right now, so I'll just save the basics here. So now my team page is looking different. I don't have that position with a colon on there with empty fields. So the develop generate doesn't necessarily fill out all the fields that you've got on everything. So these may not have position actually on them or displayed. It actually is displayed, but it's kind of long, so it looks funny since it's wrapped in that H2 tag. Some of the modules that I like to use on a standard default display or on a standard piece or a standard site, I like to use a Views Bulk Operations module, which gives you the ability to be able to turn on bulk functionality. You know how when you go to the content page, you have those checkboxes to mark to, for instance, unpublish a whole set of nodes at the same time. You can create a view that does that type of thing, and you can set that up to do things like change the data in one of the fields for all of them from one to another, or unpublish things or publish them, or that type of functionality. Draggable Views is one that I use a lot to be able to do an arbitrary sort or user-controlled sort on things. You know how the sort gave us the sort for the post date by default? I can also set up a draggable view thing that gives us a handler to be able to drag and drop that item into the position we want it to use and use that position as the setting. So on a team page, on that team page, the next step, if we have time to do that, we could maybe get back to building a draggable view that allows us to drag the team members into the position we want. So you wouldn't want to sort that by alphabetical by the guy's last name, because, you know, Zebra Man might be your president. You might want him at the top of the list, right? So you want to be able to have control of that kind of thing. It won't be necessarily by any piece of data that can be sorted. Views data export, I guess you're going to show some of that. Editable views. Anytime I've got a lot of data work that needs to happen, let's say you do a lot of importing of product data into a node type that you have, you may have fields that are not quite right in there, bad data. You may have missing data that you really need to make the site to work. So you might want to create a table that gives you an editable field so that in the row listed table format of all your nodes of that product type, maybe even filtered by what type of product it is, you can go in and you can edit the individual fields in those individual nodes, and it will save that in the node without actually opening up the node, saving it, opening up, finding and opening up the next node, saving it, etc. So I use that quite a bit. A new one, fairly new I think, that you all may want to look at is admin views, because what that will do is actually change the Drupal administration views into views that you can actually go in and modify and edit, and just with the views UI. So those are some that I use quite often when I'm doing those kinds of things. So there's a quick little views introduction. I've got some other things that I could show later on if we have time, if we want to get back to that. Or if anybody wants to work on some things or has some questions about how you might want to do something with it, Sandbox site, I'll sit down and work with you on it. It's no problem.